Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'll be working on my jade bonsai. I've got a jade forest and a large single cutting. I'm also going to be trying out a GoPro today. It's a small camera and it'll allow me to get in tight, in close to my trees, and I'll see how I can use it for videoing and taking pictures of my bonsai. Today is going to be a mixture of some bonsai work and a little bit of tech here in the bonsai zone. I created this jade bonsai forest a year ago, and I assembled it from various sources. Connor gave me the main tree. Some of them were cuttings that I'd been growing for many years, and some were just new cuttings. And they've all been doing quite well. I think I had one small cutting die at the back here, but generally the forest has been growing really well. And I really like this forest. It takes me away to a desert environment. I'm always trying to improve the look of my bonsai and my forests. So today we'll be analyzing the design of it and seeing if there's anything that can be improved. This large jade cutting was planted under a year ago. It was in February of last year, and it was a large cutting I got from Joey. It had no roots, and I defoliated the cutting to take some of the weight off the top so it would sit upright in the pot. And obviously it's rooted because it's growing really nicely now. I kept the cutting out of the rain. I just misted it. I kept the soil quite dry. And now the roots are kind of established. The plant is sitting upright. The reason it looks windswept is that I've been growing it near the window, and all the growth has been reaching for the window side of the plant room. So I'll have to change it around and kind of balance it out so it doesn't look like a windswept jade. I've never seen a windswept jade in my life, but there you go. You've seen it now, a windswept jade. Here's the tech side of today. It's the GoPro Hero 3 Plus. I borrowed this from my friend Eric that I met at the library, and it comes with an entire kit of accessories for the GoPro, chargers, remotes, all kinds of mounts for mounting to helmets, selfie stick, and all kinds of things to try out. And I will be trying out a lot of this stuff today. So let's switch now to the GoPro Hero 3 Plus, and we'll see what kind of unique shots I can get of my bonsai that a larger camera just couldn't get the same view. So I'm switching to GoPro now. Here's a view in the plant room using the GoPro. You can see it's quite a wide angle. Probably you can see the entire plant room for the first time. It's not that big a room. I'll show you the ceiling up there. And we'll rotate around to the back wall. That's a quick tour of the plant room. Here's the camera I use, a Canon R, and I'm using a 10 to 18 millimeter lens and a Rode Micro Pro microphone on top. So you can see how big this camera is compared to the GoPro. It definitely won't fit into some of those tiny spaces. There's the view I get from the viewfinder on the back. This GoPro doesn't have a viewfinder, so you just kind of guess what you're pointed at. Everything's in focus, but it is a really wide angle lens and it's a small camera. So let's start now using the GoPro and taking advantage of its small size. So let's go into some small forests and have a look around. The GoPro has some really good image stabilization. So when you're hand holding the camera, it generally looks really smooth, which will help kind of give that miniature effect to our forests. So let's fly in now to the jade forest, and hopefully it'll make us look like miniature people walking among giant succulent trees. So here we go. This is a view kind of at ground level, and I'm kind of panning around the forest. I'm trying to hold the camera as smoothly as possible, but there is some shake to it. So I'm just at the lip of the pot looking around. And now I'm going to go kind of inside the forest. So here I go. There's the trunk of the jade. I'm kind of looking up now. I'm going to go into the forest more. We're kind of equal to the first tree, and I'm kind of looking around. I'm kind of shaking the camera a lot because it's hard to get in here. And I'll put the camera, kind of tilt it right up here. Go underneath the main tree. And then I can kind of go around the lip of the pot a bit, get some different views of the forest. Like that, and now we can fly above the forest. Fly around the forest. And then we'll come back. I'm going to fly the GoPro around the plant room now and kind of see what unique views I can get of the plant room that my digital mirrorless camera just is too big to get. So let's start with that now. Here's some rocks that I might put in my jade forest. I might add some. And we're coming up to the base of my Ficus microcarpa, my very first bonsai. This is the back of it. So we'll just kind of have a look at the roots down here. Kind of go up the aerial route to the canopy. You can actually fly in amongst the branches of the canopy. And we can fly above the tree. Let's go in and look at the aloe bonsai now. Very cool. And we'll fly around and just kind of explore this miniature world with a miniature camera. There's the Natal ficus coming along nicely, the canopy. We'll look up at the guava tree. Come down and look at the ficus. Ficus plain, starting to get some leaves up top. Let's have a look at the Ficus religiosa. There's the base of the tree. You can look up to the canopy that's growing really nicely. It's got a lot of growth up top now. There's the Canada arm. Let's have a look at the Sarissa over here. I'll move the light above it. Here we go. We can look in at the lip of the pot. Look up at the tree. Check out those roots. Looking good. I don't know what the minimum focusing distance of the GoPro is, but We'll see how much of this is in focus. How close you can get to something. There's the canopy. Come in on a flower here. Some of the flowers up top. I did get a new heater in the plant room. It's in the back corner there. And I noticed the old one, which was at least 6 years old, was starting to get rusty. It maybe wasn't working as well as it did when it was brand new. So I decided I should replace it and upgrade, maybe every 5 years get a new heater just to keep it in good working order. I'll show you the heater. So it's an oil-filled radiator style heater. So what it does is it circulates oil inside these fins, and then I have a fan that blows air through the fins and keeps air circulation in the plant room, and it keeps it evenly warm. And the heater has thermostat controls on it here, so you can set your temperature and how hot you want the general unit to operate at. So there's 1, 2, and 3 settings. So there's 500 watts, 1,000 watts, and 1,500 watts. And then this controls your temperature. So on a really cold day, if it's minus 20 out, minus 20 degrees Celsius out, I need to set this at 1,500 watts, and I keep the fan blowing the hot air out into the plant room, and that keeps it warm on a really cold day. The Canada arm up here, it's I really like it. It's one of the things I'm really happy that I made, because just to be able to move this light around and adjust it, it's kind of like those lights at a dentist's office. And I'm really happy. It just makes it so nice, even for just working on trees, to have a spotlight like that you can just position anywhere. And I can raise and lower it. I've got a hand crank here that I can raise and lower it. This is just an old tripod head I put on the end of the Canada arm. So yeah, and it reaches, you can see it's over top of my table now. It reaches almost the entire room. So if I go way over here, I can reach this corner of the room with the light. Then I can go way over here into this corner. I can shine my light over in this corner of the room. Yeah, so I've got the light shining over here. It just pretty well reaches everywhere in the entire room. It can go in every corner. Yeah, it's really versatile. I'm really happy that I designed the Canada arm for my plant room. I think it's a really cool feature to have. Here I am outside now using the selfie stick on the GoPro Hero 3 Plus. So here's the plant room. I might even be able to look at the roofway up there. The weather is quite mild out today. We've had a warm spell the last couple of days. So let's go in to the bonsai area and we'll have a look and see if anything's happening. Probably not. So I'm in the greenhouse now. You can have a look around. It's a pretty small greenhouse, but it does the job. Till I get the bigger one built. You can see there's still a layer of snow on top of the trees. And as the weather warms up, the snow melts and it waters the soil down there. I'm doing a test now to see what it's like to be walking in the woods. This is just a walk in the backyard, but for test purposes, it should show what kind of view you get.
It certainly is a nice day out today. Nice and sunny and warm. Feels like spring. Here's the site of the new greenhouse. Still just have the posts up, but I'll be working on it hard this coming spring. Hey, baby. I'm going to use the GoPro to come in and look at some of the pre-bonsai trees in the front garden, get some low angle shots of them. So here I go. That's a quick look of what the Hero 3 GoPro can do. I'm going to switch back to my regular camera now, and we'll start the work on the Jade Bonsai forest. Before I work on my jade forest, I'm going to come out front and have a look at it, look at the design, and kind of discuss what's the next step. I'm out front of the forest now, looking at it from kind of eye level, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. I think, you know, the trees as they go back in the distance the trunks get smaller. The height of the overall silhouette of the forest is quite pleasing. It is getting a little long on this side. That could be pruned back a little bit. The foliage is certainly getting dense on it, and maybe that could use a little thinning. Yeah, since the last time, since it was planted, you know, with bare leaves, a lot of new shoots have grown in. So it's time to go in and kind of pick and choose and clean up the structure. Some of the trees at the back could also get pruned in height to keep them short, you know, to get more distance or more variation from the tallest tree to the smallest, and that'll give more sense of perspective. There's some rocks down here. I felt it was just sand, the landscaping, and I felt it needed something, and I tried those small rocks there, and I liked having the rock there, but I didn't like the rocks I chose. So that's why I've got those kind of reddish African rocks. Kind of these ones that I may put, you know, one of those in place instead. Yeah, we'll play around with that. If I pan up to the top of the trees, I think I could prune the very top off of all the new branches just to get them to subdivide. Just, you know, to increase the density of the foliage in the upper canopy. I'll start the work on the forest by cleaning up the landscape, picking out any weeds, any debris that's fallen down. I'll remove these rocks to kind of get a blank canvas so we can maybe place those other rocks I'm looking for any discolored leaves. There's one here. It's got a little sunburnt. I'll pull that off. Like that. There's another couple in here. Just leaves that got a little sunburn damage on them. The rest are all nice and green. I'm looking, there's a leaf that's fallen down on the soil here. I'll remove that. Like that. So just a general cleanup of the landscape. I'm going to clean up this area now. I've got this branch kind of coming in and interfering with this branch over here. So I think I want, this branch divides into two here. I don't need this third branch coming up here, so I'll snip that one off. Maybe I'll just prune it back to here for now. Something may develop on this side. I got a shoot going to the inside. Maybe something will develop on the outside there and I can keep that branch. It's good to keep all options open. I will come in and shorten this one, and it may redirect, out in this direction, which would be nice. So I'm looking for a leaf that's facing that direction and pruning just above there. So right here. Like that. So hopefully I'll get a branch coming out this direction, and that'll give each one of these branches their own spot of sunlight. I'll turn the forest around and we'll look at the back, and I'll shorten some of those back trees first. See how short I can get them. So here's the back view now. The smaller the diameter of the trunk, the shorter I want the tree, and that'll give that forced perspective in the planting. It'll make it look like these trees are in the distance. So these are some of the smallest diameter trunks, so I want these trees the shortest. So I'm looking for a point where I can come in and just prune them. I think right in here. Taking the top off the branch. And I'll do that for each one of the branches on the small tree. They're growing quite high, so I'll come in here, snip that one off there. Taking that off. And then I'll come in and look at these other ones. And for that branch, I'll come in right here and prune the top off that one. So quite a bit of foliage coming off those little trees at the back. I've got my smallest diameter trees that are at the back here, pruned down nice and short. So I'm going to rotate the forest to the side view now. This will be the left side view. There I go. So this is my main tree out front. It's going to be the tallest, the thickest. And as I go back in the planting, the trees are going to get shorter and skinnier. So this one, the second tree here, is about the same height as my tallest tree. So I'll need to prune that back to give that forced perspective. So again, I'll come in using directional pruning and try and prune away the tops of these trees. There's a clump there. Pruned away. And I'll prune this one back to here. Like that. So that's getting this height down lower than the front trees. I may have to go in and do some cleanup because I'm kind of opening up the structure and I can see more of what's going on here. There's another branch I can prune back here to there. There's a branch coming out the back here that's getting really long. So that needs pruning back to here. There's one here that needs pruning. Like that. Starting to look a lot better. From the side view now, you can see the tallest tree getting smaller, and then the smallest one at the behind there. I'm rotating the forest back to the front, like that, and I'll have a look at this second tree, the height of it. It still looks a little high to me back here, so I need to do some further pruning. So I'll come in and pick some nice pruning points and prune it back. Like that. I can take this one just a little bit lower here to there. Maybe a little more off this one. All right, let's have a look at that. It is getting maybe a little tall here and skinny. So, but I think I'll let that grow, and then I can always prune it back later to get the tree more compact again. You can see some of the leaves are getting really large on it. But that's okay, because I do want to thicken this tree up more. You know, you can prune these jades back anytime. You can let them grow really large, prune them back to just stumps, and they'll get a new flush of growth coming out on them. So that's no trouble. I'm looking at this side of the planting now. This is the height of my main tree, and I want it to kind of have a sort of asymmetrical triangular profile to the overall forest canopy. So maybe I can reduce this tree down a bit, keeping it kind of more in a nice profile. So I'll work on this tree next. All right, so I'm coming in now, taking the tips off the branches. Some of these branches do have a lot of dividing. They kind of come up as a single thing and then they start dividing. So I don't really, there's no obvious leader to them. There's just kind of a clump of new branches coming out from the top here. I may have to remove some of the leaves just to go in and be able to see the structure in here. So I'm just twisting off some of the leaves, and now I can see the branches a little more clearly. I can see what's going on. I can prune this one back just a bit, like that. I could take this one off here, and I'll take this one off there. So that gets that tree down a little bit in height. I've still got a little more work to go back here. Prune that one back a bit, and that one back a bit. So that's got this tree pruned. There's another tree just behind it that's a little tall. I'll prune that one back also. Just taking some of these branch tips off. When the tree's growing really strongly, you can defoliate the jades so you can get a really good idea of what the structure is doing on them. And I'll probably do that kind of midsummer with this forest and give it a good detailed pruning, checking all the structure and the branches, making sure they're not interfering with each other. Take this one back a little further here, like that. So that's kind of got this back one down a little lower. I may be able to get it just slightly shorter because it's in the back here. Give me a little more perspective if that one's shorter. I'll remove some of these giant leaves here, like this one, just absolutely enormous. This one too. All right, I'll have a look from the front again. I'm going to get rid of this branch that's crossing in front of the other trunks. I don't like that, so I'll prune it off flush here, like that. There's a pretty ugly scar on here that I could prune a little more flush, so I'll do that. And you can come in with your fingernail and just kind of carve any of these branches that you've pruned off nice and smooth with the trunk. And it'll heal over and you won't even be able to see that in a year or two. You just kind of carve them away and make them flush. The fingernail works really well. Like that. So that looks good. I think I'll take, to kind of make a pad here, it's getting a little tall at the back, so I'm going to take this down in height just a little bit. Take the tip off. And then I'll remove these two giant leaves. And some smaller leaves will grow in their place. And that looks more like a little pad there rather than having it tall at the back and some giant leaves. I'm looking at this little tree here. It's kind of a slanting tree. This branch here kind of blocks the view of the clump behind it. And I'm thinking of reducing that. So I'm going to prune it off to here. Like that. That gives a little more visibility into that clump there. It was getting a little heavy in this section. In this clump here, I've got this main trunk coming up here, which looks nice. And then I've got this branch that kind of interferes with it behind here. This is part of another tree that subdivides down here, and there's a nice branch going out the back. So I'm thinking I could remove this branch and kind of clean up that area quite a bit. So yeah, I think I'll do that. I'm going to remove that entirely. So here I go. Just got to get in there. I think I have to get in from the front here. Like that. I just got to get the branch out. There we go. It's out. Yeah, so that cleans up all those multi-trunks there. Kind of, you can see them all from the front now. It looks much better. It was just a little too much confusion in that area. I still think I could reduce the height here a little more. So I'm going to go quite far back to maybe here. Like that. Maybe some of these ones at the back could be reduced a bit more also. I just feel it's still a little too high. There's another branch in this clump here that's growing up on the inside here. I think I've got to remove that just to clean it up. So here I go with that. Like that. That kind of keeps everything in this clump kind of fanning outwards. Yeah, that looks much better. It's a little more open. You can see all the trunk lines. There's a few lower leaves I could remove here that are kind of spoiling the trunk lines. Some great big thick leaves. I've been looking from the front, and I think I'm still a little high with this tree. If you kind of imagine an asymmetrical triangle, this one's a little tall. So I'm going to try and prune it back further. I think I can, take a little more off. Kind of into here. Here. And through here, like that. Well, that's kind of reduced the height of that a little more. I think that's looking much better. We'll still keep developing this. This is only the first pruning since the forest was created, so there's many years to go and refine this whole forest look. I initially had a little tree in this back corner here, and it died. The cutting died. I think it needs something back there. Let me just try. There's a little cutting here. If I put that back there, I think that would improve the look of the forest. So I'll do that. I'll plant a cutting back here. So to do that, all I'll do is kind of make a hole in the soil. Just like that. I've got my cutting here, and I want my branches kind of fanning away from the center of the forest. And I'll stick my cutting in the hole, plant it, and that should develop roots fairly quickly and grow into a nice little tree. If it doesn't, I'll just keep trying with the cutting until I get something that takes in that corner. I think the jade forest is looking good. It's as much as I can do at this point in time anyway. We'll keep working on it over the years. The last thing I wanted to do was place some stones on the surface of the sand, just kind of bury them in there to give the, more of a natural look to the planting. I've got my 2 smallest stones here, and so I just need to place them somewhere where they'll look good. I could put one maybe here and maybe one back in here. And I'll have to come out front and see what that looks like, of course, but it's very distracting. I don't like that. I've got a few larger kind of chunks of pumice here, and I think they look good. Maybe I don't need any larger stones. I think now that the top of the canopy is filled out on the forest, maybe the stones just are too distracting. I don't know. I think they are. I think, the simplicity of the forest, the way it is just, it looks good. I don't think it needs any more decoration. I'll rotate the forest around 360 degrees so you can get a good look at it. So this is the front view. We'll rotate around to the right side view. There we are. Going around to the back view now. You see our new little cutting there. And to the left side view, right about there. And we're going back to the front now. I'm going to put the small jade forest back on the bench and let it grow again. And next I'll be working on my large jade cutting. The first thing I'm going to test is how stable it is in the pot. This was a cutting, and I kind of put these rocks around it just to keep it from tipping over. I was very careful with it, but I'm just wondering if it still needs rocks around it or if it's grown enough roots in the pot to be quite stable. So it looks like it's quite stable in the pot without any rocks around it. Yeah. So I'll remove these rocks. They don't need to be here. I've got a cutting here that was quite tall, and I don't think I was watering it enough. Usually people kill jades from too much watering and too much moisture, but in this case, I was keeping this tree very dry, and I think the top of the tree dried up and died away. But I still have a good strong base, and I've been watering this whole planting a little more now. So I think I can also take these rocks away now. I'll test it and see how stable it is in the pot. Oh, it looks really good now. So that'll make this whole planting a lot lighter without all those stones on top. It's still in this really giant pot and it looks ridiculous, I know, but someday this jade is going to thicken up and grow and it'll fill the pot really nicely. It might take 20 years, but it'll get there, hopefully. So next, I want to look at the styling of this tree and what do I want it to look like 20 years from now. I think this is something that most people find the hardest part about bonsai is trying to visualize what they want this tree to look like in the far future. And, this tree is going to be quite a challenge because right now it's got all these branches coming off of it, and, to give it some style, you've got to pick a style, and that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to study the tree and try and come up with something that I can build on in the future. So developing something that looks like kind of a mature jade tree. Before I get too involved with trying to pick a style for the tree, I know this tree is going to be large. I want to grow it large. I want to grow a big thick trunk on it so it actually fits this pot someday. And on a large trunk tree, I'm looking at these lowest branches here, and I've got to decide where, at what height do I want my first branching to start? How much trunk do I want on the tree before it starts subdividing? And if it's going to be a really large base on this jade, I probably don't want branches down low. I just want to show off that big thick trunk. So I'm thinking that a lot of the lower branches can be removed. And I know lower branches do contribute to the thickness of the tree. Any green foliage on the tree will contribute to the health and vigor of the tree. It all thickens the trunk up. But you've got to balance the scars left behind with the benefit of growing, sacrifice branches on the trunk. I could let this branch grow and thicken up, and the one over here and maybe the next one. I could let them contribute to the thickness of the tree for another 10 years and then cut them off. But then you'd see that scar where I cut it off. It would maybe take away from the naturalness or the beauty of the trunk. So the sooner I remove those, the less scarring I'll get, but I'll also slow the growth of the tree down. So there's always that compromise in bonsai, and you've got to pick, what's more important to you? Having this beautiful, flawless trunk, or having this thick, tapered trunk? And you've got to decide. So in this case, I think I definitely want my lowest branch off for sure. And probably that next one, that little shoot that's growing out, I want to remove that. And I think the one coming out here, I think that's just too low on the tree. And then I've come up and I've got this Y-shaped fork and I've got a branch behind it. So another thing, I think, this branch coming out the side here is too close to this Y-shaped one. I think it'll just get too congested, especially as these all thicken up. So you've got to think about that. You've got to think, not only will the trunk increase in thickness, but so will the branches. So if you have a lot of branches that are growing really closely together, as they thicken up, they'll kind of start to look worse and worse as they thicken up. They'll start to look closer and closer together. Yeah, so if you have branches too close together as they thicken up, they just look like they're getting closer and closer together. So that can be a real disadvantage of having, a lot of tight branches on a tree that you intend to grow large. So I'm thinking that bottom branch should probably come off. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to clean up that lower part of the trunk and, keep all my foliage on top and see how it looks at that point anyway. I'm hoping over the winter to get all my tools back in shape, clean them all up and sharpen them. Just haven't had time yet. It's been busy. So I'm going to remove this lowest branch now, and I'll just prune it as flush as I can for now, and then I'll clean it up later. So here I go. Just like that. These will make excellent cuttings also, which I think I'll save them because I think someone in the club would love a good size cutting of a jade like that. So I'll keep them. I'll come over here now, and I'm going to take this other branch off here, this low one here. Nice flush cut, so here I go, like that. Another nice cutting. And then I'll come out front and take that little shoot off. And I'll just come in with the scissors, and off it goes. I think the rest of the work on this tree will be more of a profile prune, just pruning back the longer branches to kind of keep it growing compact so it doesn't take up a lot of space on the bench and so it doesn't get too side heavy and, puts a lot of pressure on the trunk to tip over. You want to keep all your center of weight over the top of the trunk to keep the tree balanced. So it's getting a little long on these side branches, so I'll be pruning those back, taking a bit of weight off the tree on this side, like that. Oops. Just pruning to kind of keep the tree and basic shape under control. That takes a bit of weight off this side of the tree. You can defoliate a bit. You can take off some of the older leaves just to take a bit of weight off this side too. Sometimes with the jade, it's all about weight management, keeping the tree balanced and healthy, and so it doesn't droop. And sometimes if you let these branches grow too long, they'll actually crack and break. So you don't want that to happen. You want to keep it pruned tight so it keeps a lot of strength in the branch structure. I think the rest is quite good. Maybe just a little off this back one here, like that. The last work I'll do on the tree is just clean up these cuts. So I'll just come in with my concave pruners and just carve away, trying to make all these cuts nice and flush. That's looking good there. I'll look at this one now. I'll come in and just make this cut flush also. That was the only two big cuts I did on this tree. Jades, as they get older, they get this beautiful silvery bark on them. You can always tell a nice old jade by the, what the bark looks like. I can see a lot of green shoots developing on the trunk here, so because I've done a little bit of pruning on the tree, I'll probably get some more buds popping out, and it'll kind of make the canopy a little more dense, which will be good. It'll help thicken the trunk up and grow the tree nice and healthy. Today I got my jades cleaned up. I got my forest all cleaned up and my large single cutting. I'll be doing more footage in the future with using the GoPro, trying out different techniques and kind of getting used to the camera. And maybe someday, maybe I'll buy one, I don't know. So that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.